Blood in the tide. War on American shores. Cartel speedboats sliced through dawn fog, weapons bristling. Puerto Azul seemed defenseless, just weathered docks and simple fishing boats. Perfect target. They never questioned why those fishermen moved with lethal precision, why their sunburnt faces betrayed no fear, why their calloused hands gripped boat hooks with combat stances. First boat exploded 50 yards offshore. Second capsized in seconds. The smugglers finally understood. These weren't fishermen. These were predators who'd hunted in deeper, darker waters. Men who'd earned their tridents before trading war for waves. Now, as cartel reinforcements approached, former Team 6 operators prepared to remind invaders why seals are deadliest in shallow water. Today, Puerto Azul would teach cartel lords why some peaceful towns remain untouched. Not from luck, but from fear. But before we jump back into the video, let us know where you're watching from. And if you're enjoying this story, don't forget to subscribe because I have something really special for you tomorrow. And now, back to the video. From fear. Miguel Reyes stood at the edge of Puerto Azul's weathered pier, the pre-dawn air thick with salt and possibility. At 52, his body still carried the coiled readiness of the warrior he once was, despite his efforts to hide it beneath the simple guise of a fisherman. 20 years of Navy SEAL operations had left their mark. Not just in the scar that ran along his jawline, or the slight hitch in his step from a long-ago firefight in Kandahar, but in the way his eyes never stopped scanning the horizon, even now. Going to be a good haul today, called Dante Cooper, securing his boat to the dock with practiced ease. Younger than Miguel by a decade, Dante had served as Miguel's second-in-command during their final years in Team 6. The massive black man had traded his tactical gear for faded jeans and flannel shirts, but the vigilance in his eyes remained unchanged. "Weather says otherwise," Miguel replied, nodding toward the fog bank rolling in from the Gulf. "Something doesn't feel right." Puerto Azul had become home to 7 former SEALs over the past 8 years. They'd found their way here separately, drawn by the quiet shores and the unspoken agreement among locals not to ask too many questions. The sleepy coastal town straddled the line between Texas and Mexico, making it both strategically significant and perpetually overlooked, perfect for men who needed to disappear while remaining watchful. The town itself was a picture of faded Americana, pastel-colored, buildings weathered by salt air, a single main street lined with family-owned businesses, and beaches where local children built sandcastles without fear. Tourism had never taken hold here, leaving Puerto Azul suspended in time, untouched by the cartel violence that plagued similar towns just 40 miles south across the border. "Elena's asking about patrol schedules again," Dante said quietly, retrieving his tackle box. "Says the town council deserves to know." Miguel's jaw tightened. Town elected her mayor for her accounting skills, not her security expertise. Tell her the Fishermen's Association has everything under control. What the residents of Puerto Azul didn't know, what they couldn't know, was that their peaceful existence had been carefully protected for years. The 7 former SEALs had established an unofficial perimeter, rotating fishing schedules that doubled as patrol routes, monitoring cartel communications through channels their government connections still provided. "Jackson's back from Matamoros," Miguel added, his voice dropping further. "Says El Cuchillo is moving product again. Bigger shipments, new routes." Dante stilled, the name hanging between them like a storm cloud. Alejandro El Cuchillo Vega had risen through the ranks of the Nuevo Gulf cartel with unprecedented brutality. His nickname, the Knife, came from his preferred method of removing problems, both rivals and innocents alike. "Thought that bastard was staying on his side of the water," Dante muttered. "So did we all." The sun began to break through the fog as the other fishermen arrived at the docks. Jackson Chen, their former team's communication specialist, now owned the local electronics repair shop. His Taiwanese-American heritage made him stand out in the predominantly Hispanic town, but his fluency in Spanish and genuine skill with broken appliance had made him a community fixture. Behind him walked the Werner twins, identical down to the scars on their forearms from the same IED in Fallujah. They'd opened Puerto Azul's only gym, training local kids in boxing and self-defense when they weren't fishing. Arriving separately were Caleb Shepard, their former sniper, now running the local hardware store, and Ray Alvarez, the youngest of the group and the only one born near Puerto Azul. Ray's grandmother still lived in town, which had been his cover for relocating after his discharge, following an incident in Yemen that none of them discussed. "Morning, boss." Ray nodded to Miguel, the formality of their former ranks never quite fading. At 35, he remained the most visibly tense of the group, the most recently removed from combat. Status? Miguel asked quietly, as they prepared their boats. 3 new faces at Elena's husband's bar last night, Ray reported, asking about harbour depths, patrol patterns. Said they were sport fishermen, but their hands had never seen fishing line. Description? Mexican nationals, designer clothes, cartel ink hiding under shirt collars. One made a call when he thought no one was listening. Mentioned El Cuchillo and Mañana, tomorrow. Miguel exchanged glances with Dante. Tomorrow is today now. Their routine had evolved over years. 4 boats, daily rotations, monitoring 15 miles of coastline under the guise of commercial fishing. Their catches kept the local market supplied and suspicions minimal. The arrangement had worked flawlessly. Until now. In town, life continued in blissful ignorance. Elena Morales, the town's first female mayor, reviewed budget proposals in her small office overlooking the central plaza. Her 8-year-old daughter, Lucia, chatted with friends outside the elementary school. Shopkeepers opened for the day's business, and elderly men gathered for their morning coffee at Magdalena's cafe. What none of them knew was that Puerto Azul had been painted as a target. Miguel had suspected for months that the town's strategic location and minimal law enforcement presence would eventually catch cartel attention. The nearest border patrol station was 40 minutes away, the local sheriff's department understaffed and underfunded. We stick to protocol, Miguel told his team as they loaded their gear. No unusual behavior, but load the special equipment. Channel 3 for comms. If anything happens, we protect the town, Jackson finished. Like always. Miguel nodded, a heaviness settling in his chest. He'd come to Puerto Azul seeking peace after decades of war. He'd found it in the rhythm of tides, in teaching local kids to fish, in his small house overlooking the bay, in Catherine, the widowed schoolteacher who'd brought colour back into his world after years of grey, who believed he was simply Miguel to fisherman with the mysterious past. As they pushed their boats from the dock, Miguel spotted Catherine walking along the shore, her auburn hair catching the morning light. She waved, and he returned the gesture with a tight smile. 8 years of building a life, of learning to sleep through the night without waking reaching for a weapon. 8 years of carefully maintained peace that now balanced on a knife's edge. What's the play if they come? Dante asked quietly. Once they were away from shore, Miguel's eyes hardened as he looked back at the town, at the place that had given him a second chance at life. We do what we've always done, he said. We hunt. The 4 boats split up, heading to their designated patrol zones. As Miguel guided his vessel toward the southern approach, he reached beneath his seat and unlocked a hidden compartment. Inside lay a satellite phone and a waterproof case containing a Sig Sauer P226, the same model he'd carried for 18 years in the teams. He checked the magazine and slid it into his waistband, concealed beneath his fishing vest. Some habits never died. Some men never stopped being what they were made to be. At the eastern edge of town, unnoticed by morning commuters, a black SUV with tinted windows pulled into the parking lot of the abandoned gas station. The driver made a brief call. Estamos aquí, Puerto Azul. We're here, Puerto Azul. From the passenger seat, a man with a knife scar across his throat smiled. Prepare the boats, he ordered. El Cuchillo wants this done before noon. The sea remained calm, betraying nothing of what approached from beyond the fog bank. In Puerto Azul, children headed to school, shopkeepers swept sidewalks, and 7 former warriors prepared to defend the peace they'd fought so hard to find. The morning fog clung to the water like a shroud, transforming the gulf into a grey void that swallowed sound and distance. Miguel adjusted his heading, relying more on instinct than visibility. 20 miles offshore, where his fishing route actually marked the outer perimeter of their surveillance zone, the familiar crackle of the radio cut through the stillness. Pelican to Osprey. Over. Jackson's voice, using their old call signs. Miguel reached for the radio. Osprey here. Movement on thermal. 3. No. 5 heat signatures approaching from southeast, moving fast. Approximately 8 miles out, on intercept course. Miguel's pulse quickened, but his voice remained steady. Copy that. Maintain position. Alert the others. Years of operational discipline took over as Miguel reached for the satellite phone. 3 quick commands activated the coastal monitoring system they'd installed 2 years ago, modified surveillance equipment that Jackson maintained under the pretense of weather monitoring. The fog-shrouded water before him suddenly appeared on his phone's screen in ghostly green thermal imaging. 5 vessels, moving in tight formation. Too fast for fishing boats. Too purposeful for recreational craft. All units, we have potential. In contact, Miguel said into the secure channel. Protocol Sierra in effect. In their coded language, Sierra meant prepare but do not engage, observe and report. They developed these protocols, hoping never to use them. a contingency plan for the invasion they'd always feared might come. What happened next shattered 8 years of careful preparation. A deafening explosion ripped through the morning calm. Miles away, near the harbor entrance, a fireball rose above the fog bank. The distress signal from Caleb's boat blared across all channels before cutting to static. Osprey to Hawk. Caleb, respond. Miguel barked into the radio, already turning his boat toward the explosion. The thermal feed showed one of the approaching vessels had broken formation, accelerating toward Caleb's position. The other 4 continued on course toward Puerto Azul's harbor. I've got eyes on Hawk's position, came Dante's voice, tight with controlled urgency. His boat's gone. 2 cartel vessels on scene. Armed personnel visible. Status of Hawk, Miguel demanded. The pause lasted too long. No visual on Hawk. Debris in water. Miguel's mind raced through possibilities as he pushed his engine to full throttle. Caleb was their best marksman, positioned closest to shore as their first line of defense. If they'd taken him by surprise. All units converge on harbor approach, Miguel ordered. Protect the town at all costs. Protocol Zulu is now in effect. Protocol Zulu, the contingency they'd discussed but never formalized. Full defensive engagement. The line they'd sworn as civilians never to cross again. The radio came alive with confirmations as Miguel's boat sliced through the waves. The fog began to thin, revealing glimpses of the coastline. Through breaks in the mist, he could see Puerto Azul's marina, peaceful and oblivious to the approaching threat. I count 12 tangos on the lead boat, Ray reported. Heavy weapons, military grade. Mayor's office notified? Miguel asked. Negative, Jackson responded. Phone lines to town are dead, cell service too. They'd cut communications. This wasn't a random incursion, it was a coordinated attack. Miguel's mind flashed. To Catherine, to the school where she taught, to the hundreds of civilians who had no idea what was coming. Ray, get to shore. Alert Elena. Initiate town evacuation. Werner brothers, intercept the lead vessels. Dante, already moving to recover Caleb. Dante cut in. If he's in the water, I'll find him. As the fog continued to lift, Miguel caught his first visual confirmation of the threat. Sleek, black speedboats designed for smuggling runs, modified with mounted weapons. The cartel wasn't sending scouts. This was an invasion force. His satellite phone vibrated. A text message from an unlisted number. One of their government contacts still feeding them intelligence. El Cuchillo en route to Puerto Azul personally. High-value shipment. Town designated as new primary distribution hub. Miguel's blood ran cold. This wasn't just about using their harbor for a single shipment. They planned to take over Puerto Azul completely, to turn it into a cartel outpost on US soil, with all the violence and corruption that entailed. A second explosion rocked the morning as one of the Werner twins intercepted the lead cartel boat. Through the thermal feed, Miguel watched as the cartel vessel erupted in flame, but 2 more swerved around it, continuing toward the harbor. Werner 1, status, Miguel demanded. Minor damage, 2 hostiles eliminated, continuing pursuit of secondary targets. The cool efficiency in Eric Werner's voice betrayed nothing of the gravity of what they'd just done. American civilians engaging in combat on US waters. Lines crossed that could never be uncrossed. Miguel's boat crested a wave as he rounded the harbor point, bringing the full scene into devastating clarity. One cartel boat had already reached the public dock. Black-clad figures poured onto the boardwalk, weapons raised. A fisherman, a real one, not part of their team, lay motionless on the wooden planks. The first civilian casualty. In town, a siren began to wail, the hurricane warning system. Ray must have reached the mayor's office. Through his binoculars, Miguel could see people emerging from shops in confusion, unaware of the armed men approaching from the harbor. All units. Hostiles have made landfall, Miguel reported, his voice dropping to the cold, detached tone he hadn't used since his last mission. Civilians in immediate danger. Engage and eliminate all threats. The words hung in the air. For 8 years, they had been fishermen, shopkeepers, neighbors. In the span of 10 minutes, they had become warriors again. Miguel's boat approached the secondary dock at full speed. He cut the engine at the last possible moment, using momentum to glide alongside the weathered pier. In one fluid motion, he secured the boat and retrieved his weapon from its hiding place. Muscle memory took over as he checked the magazine and chamber. His fishing vest concealed a lightweight tactical vest, another precaution he'd maintained despite years of peace. As he moved from the dock toward town, a flash of movement to his right caught his attention. 3 armed men appeared from between storage buildings, their surprise at seeing him quickly replaced by recognition as they raised their weapons. Es uno de ellos! One shouted. He's one of them. They knew. Somehow, they knew who they were facing. Miguel's first shot dropped the lead attacker. His second found the throat of the man behind him. The third man managed to fire, the bullet grazing Miguel's arm before Miguel's return fire struck center mass. The sound of gunfire echoed through the once peaceful town. From the direction of the main street, screams erupted. Miguel pressed his back against a building, applying pressure to his bleeding arm as he radioed his team. They were expecting us, he said grimly. This isn't random. They knew exactly who lives in Puerto Azul. It's worse, Jackson's voice crackled through. I'm intercepting their comms. They're taking hostages. They're heading for the school where Catherine taught, where dozens of children, including Elena's daughter, were just starting their day. Ray, status on evacuation, Miguel demanded, already moving toward the school's location. Mayor's issuing the order, but it's chaos. Sheriff's deputies are down. They hit the station first. Of course they had. Eliminate local law enforcement before the main assault. As Miguel rounded the corner onto Main Street, the full scale of the invasion became clear. Civilians ran in panic, as black-clad gunmen moved with military precision, securing intersections, herding people into the central plaza. A cartel lieutenant shouted orders from the steps of Town Hall, where the American flag was being lowered, replaced with a black banner bearing the knife emblem of El Cuchillo's organization. This wasn't a smuggling operation gone wrong. This was an occupation. Miguel ducked into an alleyway, his mind cycling through options. None of them good. They were outnumbered at least 5-1. Border Patrol wouldn't arrive for at least 30 minutes, even if they'd been alerted. The nearest military response would take hours. Puerto Azul was on its own. His radio crackled again. Osprey, this is Raven, Dante's voice, tight with emotion. I found Hawk. Status? Miguel asked, dreading the answer. He's alive. Barely. Took 2 rounds to the chest. No exit wounds. I've got him stabilized. But he needs medical now. 1. Of their own. Critically wounded, the stakes crystallizing with every passing second. Miguel made his decision. Get him to Doc Martinez's clinic on 3rd Street. Jackson, rendezvous there. Werner Brothers, continue harbor defense. Don't let any more boats dock. Ray, get to the school. I'm 3 minutes out. What's the play, boss? Ray asked, the youngest of them sounding suddenly very young indeed. Miguel checked his ammunition as distant gunfire punctuated the chaos of the town he'd sworn to protect. We take back Puerto Azul, he said. 1 block at a time. As he moved through back alleys toward the school, Miguel spotted a group of cartel gunmen dragging terrified civilians from their homes, forcing them toward the plaza. A woman clutched her child, tears streaming down her face as a rifle barrel pressed against her back. These were his neighbors. The people who had accepted him, who believed the lie that he was just a fisherman with a mysterious past. The cartel had made a critical miscalculation. They had studied enough to know the town harbored former SEALs. What they failed to understand was what happens when you threaten a SEAL's home. Miguel raised his weapon, years of training narrowing his focus to the mission ahead. The warm-blooded fisherman receded, replaced by the cold precision of the operator he'd once been. Puerto Azul had been invaded, but the invaders were about to learn the cost of their mistake. The hunter had awakened. Miguel moved through Puerto Azul like a ghost, utilizing the town's narrow alleys and service passages, routes he'd memorized years ago for precisely this scenario. The sound of automatic weapons fire punctuated the morning air, now thick with smoke from burning vehicles. In the distance, the elementary school's red-tiled roof remained his focal point. His satellite phone vibrated. Jackson's specialized tracking system, showing cartel forces converging on key infrastructure. 25 hostiles inside the town. Perimeter. Another dozen securing the harbor. The largest concentration, 8 armed men, surrounded the school. Ahead, 2 cartel gunmen dragged a struggling man from his auto repair shop. Miguel recognized him. Manuel Ortiz, father of 3, who'd fixed Miguel's boat engine countless times. As one gunman pressed a pistol to Manuel's head, Miguel lined up his shot. 2 controlled bursts. Both gunmen dropped. Manuel looked up in shock as Miguel emerged from the shadows. Get your family, Miguel ordered, pressing a handgun into Manuel's shaking hands. Go to Doc Martinez's clinic. Tell anyone you trust to meet there. Miguel, no time, go. Manuel's expression shifted from confusion to grim understanding as he took the weapon. My brother was a Marine. I know which end the bullets come from. Miguel nodded. 1 unlikely ally recruited. The clinic. 1 hour. As Manuel disappeared down an alley, Miguel continued toward the school, his earpiece crackling with updates. Werner 2 here. Harbor secured. 3 hostile vessels. Neutralized. 2 escaped south. Understood, Miguel responded. Maintain position. Be prepared for reinforcements. Osprey, this is Ray. I'm at the school's rear entrance. 8 tangos, heavily armed. They've got 20+ children and 3 teachers in the gymnasium. They're separating adults from children. Miguel's pace quickened. Any visual on Catherine? Negative. Wait, they're moving someone to a vehicle. Female, auburn hair. Catherine. Miguel's chest tightened. Hold your position, he ordered, though every instinct screamed to run faster. I'm 2 minutes out. Another voice cut through. Dante, breathless. Hawk is with Doc Martinez. He's critical, but stable. Doc's converting his clinic to triage. We've got 6 civilians here so far, including Manuel's family. Set up a defensive perimeter, Miguel instructed. The clinic is our fallback position. The school came into view as Miguel ducked behind a landscaping truck. Through his scope, he assessed the situation. Armed men positioned at each entrance, communications equipment on the roof, and a black SUV idling near the main doors. From his vantage point, he could see into the gymnasium through its high windows, children huddled together on the floor, teachers trying to calm them despite their own terror. Armed men patrolled the perimeter, while a central figure gave orders, taller than the others, with a silver skull emblem on his tactical vest. The radio clicked twice. Ray's signal that he was in position at the rear of the building. Ray, count. 8 inside, 4 outside, plus the vehicle driver. Jackson, status. Moving to your position. 3 minutes out. Miguel calculated their options, none of them clean. A frontal assault would put the children at risk. Waiting for backup meant Catherine might be taken beyond their reach. The decision came as the gymnasium doors opened and 2 gunmen emerged, dragging Catherine between them. Even from a distance, Miguel could see blood on her face, but her posture remained, defiant as they forced her toward the waiting vehicle. All units, execute Sparrow protocol. Now, it was a contingency they'd designed for hostage scenarios. Synchronous strikes on power infrastructure and communication nodes, followed by targeted elimination of hostile leadership. On Miguel's command, Jackson remotely triggered the package. They'd hidden in the town's electrical substation years ago. Puerto Azul plunged into darkness as transformers blew in coordinated sequence. Simultaneously, the town's cell tower went silent, its backup generator disabled by a secondary charge. In the momentary confusion, Miguel moved. 3 precise shots eliminated the gunman nearest Catherine. As they fell, Ray emerged from his position, laying down covering fire while Miguel closed the distance. Catherine's eyes widened as Miguel reached her, recognition mixing with shock. Miguel? What? Later, he said, pulling her behind the shelter of the SUV as return fire pinged off the vehicle's frame. Can you get to the children? Her shock transformed into focused determination, a glimpse of the strength that had drawn him to her. Yes, there's a service corridor they don't know about. Get them out the back. Ray will cover you. She clasped his arm, her fingers digging into his sleeve. Miguel, they're looking for you, by name. They have pictures of all of you, confirmation of his worst suspicion. This wasn't random. They'd been targeted specifically. Go, he urged her. Get the children to the clinic. We'll handle this. As Catherine slipped away, Miguel signaled Ray to escort her. The younger SEAL acknowledged with a hand gesture before disappearing into the building behind Catherine. The cartel forces had recovered from the initial surprise, reorganizing with practiced efficiency. Bullets peppered Miguel's position as he took cover behind a concrete planter. Through his earpiece, Jackson confirmed his arrival at the southwestern corner of the school grounds. Osprey, I count 4 tangos moving to flank your position, Jackson reported. And we've got another problem. Vehicle approaching from the south, black Suburban, reinforced front end. El Cuchillo? Miguel asked, returning fire to keep the gunman pinned. Behind a school bus. Negative. Different signature. Wait, I'm picking up federal radio traffic. A new complication. Border Patrol this quickly would be unprecedented. The approaching vehicle rounded the corner at speed, catching one of the cartel gunmen in its path with a sickening impact. It skidded to a halt, and the driver's door flew open to reveal Sheriff Caroline Rhodes, blood streaming from a gash on her forehead, shotgun in hand. Get down, Miguel shouted as cartel fire converged on her position. The sheriff dove behind her vehicle, remarkably calm as she pumped her shotgun and returned fire. Reyes, what the hell is happening to my town? Miguel moved to her position in a crouched run. Cartel invasion, at least 30 hostiles. They've taken control of the harbor and town center. Rhodes chambered another round. My deputies? Unknown. Communications are down. The sheriff's expression hardened. I've got 3 deputies unaccounted for. Station was hit first. I was on patrol when they came in. She ejected a spent shell. Guess all those rumors about you, boys, were true. Miguel didn't waste time denying it. We need to get the civilians to safety. We're establishing a secure zone at Doc Martinez's clinic. Rhodes nodded, the practical reality overriding any questions about Miguel's past. I called for backup before they took down the cell tower. Border Patrol, state troopers. But they're at least 30 minutes out. We don't have 30 minutes, Miguel said, as another burst of gunfire ricocheted off the sheriff's vehicle. They're separating adults from children, taking specific targets. Why? What do they want with Puerto Azul? Miguel's response was cut short as the distinctive crack of a sniper rifle echoed across the school grounds. The cartel gunman who had been coordinating their defense crumpled to the pavement. Hawk sends his regards, came Dante's voice over the radio. Doc patched him up enough to hold a rifle. We've got a defensible position at the clinic. 23 civilians accounted for. A flicker of hope. Caleb was conscious, and they were consolidating their defense. Miguel turned to Rhodes. Sheriff, I need you to get to the clinic. Coordinate the civilian evacuation. There's a coastal access road through the nature preserve that they haven't secured yet. Rhodes studied him, professional assessment in her gaze. And what will you be doing, fishermen? Hunting, Miguel replied, checking his ammunition. They came for my team specifically. I need to know why and who sent them. The school's rear. Doors burst open, Ray emerging with Catherine beside him, leading a stream of frightened children and teachers. They moved in practice formation toward the evacuation route Miguel had indicated. Rhodes watched the operation with newfound respect. You've been preparing for this, hoping it would never happen, Miguel corrected. Sheriff, these men aren't just cartel soldiers. Their tactics, their precision, they're military trained. Someone has upgraded El Cuchillo's operation. The implications hung between them. A cartel with military-grade training and equipment, establishing a foothold on American soil. Rhodes nodded grimly. Get me answers, Reyes. I'll keep our people safe. As the sheriff moved to assist with the evacuation, Jackson appeared at Miguel's side, his tablet displaying thermal imagery of the town. We've got movement at Town Hall, he reported. They're gathering hostages in the plaza. And there's a new development. Military-grade communication equipment being installed on the roof. Miguel studied the images. They're setting up for the long haul. This isn't a raid. It's an occupation. Why Puerto Azul? Ray asked, rejoining them after ensuring Catherine and the children were safely away. There are bigger ports, less defended towns. Miguel's gaze settled on the distant figure directing operations from the town hall steps, a man whose posture and command presence stood out from the others. Because of us, he said quietly. This is personal. The midday sun beat down on Puerto Azul as Miguel, Ray, and Jackson converged on Magdalena's cafe. Now their impromptu command center. The building's rear storage room offered line of sight to the town plaza, while remaining outside the cartel's patrol routes. Miguel winced as he rebandaged his arm wound. Through the cafe's rear window, he could see cartel forces consolidating their position, gun emplacements at key intersections, communication equipment on rooftops, hostages gathered in the central plaza. Preliminary count, 38 hostiles, 42 civilian hostages, Jackson reported, placing surveillance photos on the table between them. They've established 4 checkpoints around the town perimeter and control the harbor completely. Border Patrol? Miguel asked. Intercepted their communications. They've established a perimeter 3 miles out, but they're not advancing. Someone higher up ordered them to hold position. Miguel frowned. They're containing it rather than confronting it. There's more, Jackson continued, his expression grave. I've identified their commander. He slid a thermal image across the table. Recognize him? Miguel studied the grainy figure, tall, broad-shouldered, moving with military bearing. Recognition hit like a physical blow. Vega. Who? Ray asked. Xavier. Vega. Former Special Forces. We ran counter-narcotics operations with his team in Colombia. 2010. Miguel's jaw tightened. He went off-grid 3 years later. Rumors he'd crossed over. Not rumors anymore, Jackson said. He's coordinating their defense like a military operation. And he's got reinforcements incoming. 2 more vessels approaching from the south. The implications settled heavily. Not just cartel thugs, professionally trained mercenaries led by a former US special operator. What's our status? Miguel asked. Verna. Brothers have regrouped at the marina. They've rigged the remaining boats with explosives. Contingency plan if we need to deny the harbor. Dante, with Caleb at the clinic. Doc stabilized him, but he needs a proper hospital. Sheriff Rhodes has established an evacuation point at the Nature Preserve trailhead. They've moved 58 civilians out so far. Miguel calculated their odds. 7 operators, One wounded, against a professional force 3 times their size and growing. And Catherine, he asked quietly. Safe at the evacuation point, Ray answered. Helping with the children. Miguel nodded, relief mixing with the grim reality of their situation. What's their objective? They've taken the town, secured the harbor. Why not move their shipment through immediately? Jackson pulled up satellite imagery. That's the thing. There's no major shipment visible, no container vessels, no significant watercraft approaching other than their tactical boats. So what are they waiting for? The answer came in the form of a loudspeaker announcement from the plaza, the voice echoing through Puerto Azul's empty streets. Attention, former members of SEAL Team 6. This message is specifically for Miguel Reyes, Dante Cooper, Caleb Shepard, Jackson Chen, Eric and Anders Werner, and Raymond Alvarez. The voice paused, allowing the names to hang in the air. We have control of Puerto Azul. We have 42 of your neighbors as our guests. My employer wishes to speak with you directly. You have 1 hour to surrender yourselves at the town plaza. Every 10 minutes beyond that deadline, 1 hostage will be executed. The amplified voice carried a chilling professionalism. Not the typical cartel brutality, but calculating military precision. Do not doubt our resolve. To demonstrate, a single gunshot cracked through the speaker, followed by screams. That was the harbor master. The next demonstration will be in 59 minutes. Unless all 7 of you present yourselves. Unarmed, the speaker fell silent, leaving only the distant sobbing of hostages. Ray's hand tightened around his weapon. They're here for us. Not just us, Miguel said, the pieces falling into place. They want Puerto Azul. We're just the first obstacle. Strategic location, Jackson agreed. Deepwater harbor, minimal federal presence, direct route to 3 major highways. Perfect narco distribution hub, Miguel concluded. And eliminating us sends a message to anyone else who might resist. Ray checked his ammunition. So we take the fight to them, hit them before they expect it. And lose how many civilians in the process? Miguel countered. They're using our neighbors as human shields. Then what? We surrender? Ray's voice rose. You know what they'll do to us. Miguel's response was cut short by the buzz of his satellite phone. A message from Dante. Problem at the clinic. El Cuchillo's men found our evacuation route. Sheriff Rhodes is holding them off, but we need support. The situation deteriorating by the minute. Ray, get to the clinic. Reinforce Dante. Jackson, maintain surveillance. I'm going to find Vega. Ray stared at him. You're going in alone. That's suicide. I'm not surrendering, Miguel clarified. But Vega wants to talk, so I'll talk. Keep him distracted while you get the civilians clear. It's a trap, Jackson warned. Of course it is. Miguel checked his weapon one final time. But I know Vega. He'll want to gloat before he acts. That gives us time. Before his team could object further, Miguel's satellite phone buzzed again. This time with a direct message. I know you're receiving this, Reyes. The clinic, the evacuation route, we're aware of all of it. Surrender now, or the next demonstration will be the schoolteacher. Catherine, isn't it? So much more than a neighbor to you, I understand. Miguel's blood ran cold. They knew everything. Their identities, their relationships, their contingency plans. How are they always one step ahead? Ray asked, reading the message over Miguel's shoulder. The answer hit Miguel with sickening clarity. Because someone told them. We have a traitor. Afternoon heat shimmered above Puerto Azul's streets as Miguel made his way toward the plaza. He moved through shadows and blind spots, avoiding cartel patrols with practiced ease. Each step felt like a return to his former life. The hyper-awareness, the calculated risks, the cold precision of combat mathematics. In his earpiece, Jackson guided him around enemy positions. 2 tangos approaching from the west. Hold position. Miguel pressed himself into a recessed doorway, controlling his breathing as boots passed mere feet away. Once clear, he continued his advance. Status on the clinic? He asked quietly. Ray arrived safely. They've repelled the initial attack, but cartel forces are massing for another push. Dante reports 12 wounded civilians under their protection. Sheriff Rhodes took a round to the shoulder, but remains operational. More collateral damage. More neighbors paying the price for a war they never chose. And the evacuation? Proceeding, but slowly. Werner brothers are providing security for the civilian convoy. Border Patrol has established air sieving point 3 miles inland. Some good news, at least. Tell the Werners to prioritize Catherine's safety. If nothing else, understood, Jackson interrupted, sparing Miguel from having to finish the thought. As the plaza came into view, Miguel assessed the situation. Cartel gunmen had established firing positions around the perimeter. Hostages knelt. In the center, hands bound behind them, surrounded by armed guards. Standing on the town hall steps was Xavier Vega, still recognizable despite the years, his former military bearing unmistakable. Miguel activated his comm one final time. "I'm going in. Maintain radio silence unless emergency. If this goes sideways, get everyone out and burn the harbor. Don't let them establish a foothold." "Copy that," Jackson replied, tension evident in his voice. Good hunting, Miguel secured, his primary weapon in a hidden location he could access later, keeping only a concealed backup pistol. Then, with a deep breath, he stepped into the open. "Vega!" he called, hands raised to shoulder height. "Let's talk." The plaza fell silent as all eyes turned to him. Armed men swiveled their weapons in his direction, laser sights dancing across his chest. Vega smiled, the same cold expression Miguel remembered from joint operations years ago. "Miguel Reyes," Vega announced, descending the town hall steps. "The legendary SEAL who disappeared. Welcome to the negotiating table." Vega approached slowly, maintaining a careful distance. His tactical gear was top quality. His sidearm an FN-57, an executioner's weapon designed to penetrate body. "Armor, only you?" Vega asked, glancing around. "Where are your brothers in arms?" "I came to talk terms," Miguel replied evenly. "Release the hostages. Take me instead." Vega laughed, a sound without humor. "Always the hero, Reyes, but this isn't one of our old missions. I'm not here to negotiate. I'm here to deliver a message. From El Cuchillo. El Cuchillo is merely a business partner. My employer has bigger concerns than drug distribution." Vega gestured around the occupied plaza. "This is just a demonstration, a proof of concept." Miguel assessed escape routes, potential weapons, distance to hostages. Demonstration of what? That it can be done. Vega smiled again. A private military force, taking American territory with minimal resistance, establishing infrastructure for ongoing operations. The implications sent a chill through Miguel. Not just a cartel operation, something larger. "Who are you working for?" "Vega, someone who remembers what you and your team did in Sinaloa." Vega's voice hardened. "Someone who lost everything when you eliminated the Rojas cartel leadership." Recognition dawned. Operation Kingfisher, 2015. The mission that never officially happened, Vega confirmed. 63 cartel members eliminated, including Emilio Rojas and his entire command structure. Officially, they died in a territorial dispute. Unofficially, SEAL Team 6 executed them. Under your command. Miguel remained expressionless, though his mind raced. Operation Kingfisher had been classified at the highest levels, a direct action mission against a cartel that had executed American DEA agents. That operation saved lives, Miguel said. The Rojas cartel was butchering civilians, corrupting officials. "Spare me the justification," Vega cut in. "I'm not here for a moral debate. I'm here because Emilio Rojas had a son, Asen, who spent the last decade accumulating resources, recruiting talent, and planning his revenge. The pieces clicked into place. He sent you to draw us out. Antonio Rojas doesn't just want you dead, Reyes. He wants to destroy everything you built. Your town, your new life, your neighbors who trusted you." Vega gestured to a cartel soldier who dragged a civilian to his feet. Mayor Elena Morales, her face bruised but defiant. "Tell me, does she know who you really are? Do any of them? Did you tell them they were living next to men with blood on their hands?" Miguel kept his expression neutral despite the twisting in his gut. "Let her go, Vega. Your quarrel is with me. My quarrel is with all of you. And it ends today." Vega pulled a tablet from his tactical vest, activating the screen. "Where are your teammates, Reyes?" "Safe, are they?" Vega turned the tablet, revealing a live feed of the clinic. Now surrounded by cartel forces. "Rojas wants you all. The full team that executed his father." Miguel's jaw tightened as he watched Dante and Ray moving wounded civilians away from windows, preparing for an assault. "You have two options," Vega continued. "Surrender your entire team, and we execute you cleanly. Resist, and we kill every civilian in Puerto Azul before killing you anyway. There's a third option," Miguel said quietly. "I kill you right here." Vega's laugh held genuine amusement. "With what? You're unarmed, surrounded by my men. Did your skills diminish so much during your fishing career?" "They evolved," Miguel replied, his hands slowly dropping to his side. The movement drew Vega's attention, exactly as Miguel intended. In that split second of distraction, Miguel exploded into action. His hand didn't go for his concealed weapon as Vega expected, but to the ceremonial flagpole beside the town hall steps. With one powerful motion, he tore the pole free, driving its ornamental eagle head tip directly into Vega's throat. Vega staggered back, blood spraying from his severed carotid artery. Before the cartel gunman could react, Miguel dropped into a roll, retrieving Vega's fallen sidearm and eliminating the two nearest threats with precision headshots. Chaos erupted as hostages scattered. Cartel forces opened fire, and Miguel took cover behind a concrete planter. "Jackson, now!" he shouted into his comm, abandoning radio silence. On Miguel's signal, Jackson remotely triggered the secondary charges they'd placed throughout Puerto Azul years earlier. Not to destroy, but to distract. Smoke canisters hidden in drainage systems flooded the plaza with thick cover. Simultaneously, the town's emergency sirens blared to life, adding to the confusion. Through his earpiece, Miguel heard Jackson coordinating the counterattack. All units execute Scorpion Protocol. Werners hit the plaza from the north. Dante, hold position at the clinic. Ray, begin hostage extraction. Under cover of smoke and chaos, Miguel moved between cartel gunmen with lethal efficiency. Each engagement lasted seconds, close quarters combat at its most brutal. He fought, not with the controlled tactics of his SEAL operations, but with the desperate ferocity of a man protecting his home. When the smoke began to clear, 5 cartel soldiers lay dead around him. The remaining forces had fallen back to defensive positions, momentarily repelled by the unexpected resistance. In the center of the plaza, Mayor Elena helped other hostages to safety, displaying the leadership that had made her respected in peacetime. Miguel reached her side, providing covering fire as they retreated toward a defensible position. "Get to the church basement. There's a tunnel access to the preservation area." Elena stared at him, recognition and betrayal warring in her expression. "All this time, you knew something like this could happen." "We hoped it wouldn't," Miguel answered truthfully. "We thought our presence would deter it." "You brought this to us," she accused, even as she helped an elderly neighbor to his feet. The accusation struck like a physical blow because Miguel recognized its truth. They had chosen Puerto Azul for its strategic defensibility, its isolation, its potential as a sanctuary. In doing so, they had marked it, painted a target on a town of innocents. "Yes," he admitted, providing cover as more hostages fled. "And I'll die fixing it if necessary." Before Eleanor could respond, a new voice crackled through Miguel's comm. "Jackson," his typically calm tone now urgent. "Osprey, we've got a problem. Thermal imaging shows reinforcements landing at the south dock, at least 20 additional hostiles. And," Jackson paused, "satellite shows a helicopter inbound from Mexican airspace. ETA 4 minutes. The situation deteriorating faster than they could respond." "Understood," Miguel replied. "Status on civilians, 60% evacuated. Border Patrol reports receiving 142 refugees so far. Not enough. Too many still in danger." As the hostages disappeared into the safety of the church, Miguel made a decision. "All units fall back to defensive positions. Priority is civilian evacuation. We hold them long enough for Border Patrol to get our people out." Through the comm, he heard the Werner brothers acknowledge from their position near the harbor. Dante reported that the clinic defense was holding, barely. Ray confirmed that the school was clear, all children accounted for. But when Miguel asked for Catherine's status, the response came from an unexpected source. "Miguel," Sheriff Rhodes's voice, strained with pain. "Catherine went back for her students' records. She never made the evacuation point." Miguel's blood ran cold. "Location?" "Last seen heading toward the school administrator's office. East Wing. The helicopter would arrive in minutes. Reinforcements were already landing. The window for escape." Narrowing with each passing second, Miguel made his choice. "Jackson, coordinate the defense. I'm going after Catherine." "Miguel, wait," Jackson began. But Miguel was already moving, racing through back alleys toward the school, driven by something stronger than tactical consideration. Fear, not for himself, but for the woman who had helped him remember how to be human again after years of war. As he approached the school grounds, Miguel spotted movement at the East Wing entrance. 2 cartel gunmen escorting a figure with auburn hair toward a waiting vehicle. Catherine, alive, but captured. Miguel raised his weapon, calculating range and risk, when a strange realization stopped him cold. The gunmen weren't forcing Catherine into the vehicle. She was directing them, pointing toward the administration building with evident authority. As Miguel watched in disbelief, one of the gunmen handed Catherine a radio. She spoke into it, her posture confident, her movements unrestrained. The truth hit him with devastating clarity, just as Catherine looked up and spotted him across the schoolyard. Her expression shifted from surprise to cold calculation. Not a hostage, an operative. The betrayal Miguel had sensed wasn't from within his team. It had been sleeping beside him for nearly 2 years. Catherine's eyes met Miguel's across the schoolyard. Recognition. Followed by something cold and professional. She raised the radio to her lips, speaking quickly, and the cartel gunmen spun toward Miguel's position, weapons raised. Miguel ducked behind a concrete wall as bullets shattered the brick where he'd been standing. His mind struggled to process the revelation, even as his body responded with trained precision, returning fire to keep the gunman pinned. "Jackson," he barked into his comm. "Catherine is compromised. I repeat, Catherine is a hostile operative." "That's impossible," Jackson replied. "We vetted her. Multiple background checks." "I'm looking at her right now," Miguel said grimly, watching as Catherine directed the gunman to flank his position. "She's coordinating their movements." The betrayal crystallized into tactical reality. Catherine knew their protocols, their fallback positions, their evacuation routes. She'd been inside their homes, their lives, for years. Miguel calculated his options as bullets chipped away at his cover. Direct engagement would be a tactical error. Catherine had already demonstrated her willingness to use civilians as shields. Pursuit would draw him away from the primary mission of civilian evacuation. "Fall back," he ordered himself as much as his team. "All units maintain defensive positions. Protect the evacuation routes." As Miguel retreated through the school's maintenance corridors, his satellite phone buzzed with an incoming message. Sender ID was blocked, but the message was clear. "Did you think I wouldn't have contingencies, Miguel? Catherine sends her regards. She's been enjoying your company for the past 2 years. Every weakness noted, every defense mapped. Tell your team the choice remains. Surrender or watch Puerto Azul burn." The signature confirmed his worst fears. Antonio Rojas. Outside, the distinctive whoomp-whoomp of helicopter rotors announced the arrival of cartel reinforcements. Through windows, Miguel glimpsed a black Bell 429 touching down in the town plaza, disgorging more armed personnel. "Jackson, status update," Miguel demanded as he secured the school's rear exit. "Not good. Cartel forces have established a perimeter around the evacuation route. Werner brothers are engaged at the marina. Heavy resistance. Dante reports the clinic is surrounded, but holding, and Border Patrol still maintaining their containment position. They've requested military support, but authorization is pending. Bureaucracy and caution while civilians remained in danger." Miguel made a decision. New plan. "We break through their perimeter at the North Access Road. Create an opening for the remaining civilians. That's at least 15 hostiles against our diminished force," Jackson cautioned. "Then we get creative." Miguel worked his way toward the town's public works building, a nondescript structure that housed maintenance equipment and, more importantly, the keys to Puerto Azul's heavy machinery. Inside, he found what he needed: the controls to the town's road maintenance vehicles. "Dante, I need a distraction at the clinic, something loud visible from all over town." Despite the grim situation, Dante's response carried a hint of his old humor. "I've got just the thing. Doc's oxygen tanks won't mind being repurposed. Execute in 3 minutes. All other units prepare to move civilians on my mark," while establishing his position in the public works building. Miguel's mind kept returning to Catherine's betrayal. 2 years of shared meals, shared confidences, shared bed, all while she reported their movements, mapped their defenses, prepared for this day. Had any of it been real? The question burned through him, but he forced it aside. Survival first, recrimination later. On schedule, a massive explosion rocked the town as Dante detonated the clinic's oxygen supply, a controlled blast designed for maximum visual effect with minimal structural damage. As cartel forces converged on the apparent catastrophe, Miguel activated the town's heavy equipment. 3 unmanned bulldozers rumbled to life, their remote operation systems hacked by Jackson years earlier as part of their contingency planning. Miguel guided the machines toward the north perimeter, creating a moving barricade of steel and engine power that cartel gunmen scrambled to avoid. In the confusion, the Werner brothers led a group of 30 civilians through the breach, racing toward the Border Patrol containment line beyond. "That's the last group from the marina," Eric Werner reported, moving to reinforce Dante. As Miguel continued coordinating the escape, movement on his tactical display caught his attention. A familiar heat signature approaching his position with deliberate purpose. Not the random patrol pattern of searching cartel forces, but the direct approach of someone who knew exactly where to find him. Catherine. She entered the building alone, weapon drawn, but not raised. Her auburn hair was now tied back in a tactical configuration. Her teacher's casual clothing replaced by fitted black tactical gear. The transformation was so complete it seemed impossible she'd ever been anything else. "They told me you'd be here," she said, her voice carrying none of the warmth he remembered. Predictable as always, Miguel. Miguel kept his weapon trained on her, fighting the instinct to lower it. How long? From the beginning. No hesitation, no remorse. Antonio Rojas has been planning this since you killed his father. Finding you was just the first step. And the others, the town, collateral. Catherine shrugged. We needed a test case, a proof of concept for establishing cartel territory on American soil. Puerto Azul was perfect, isolated, minimal law enforcement, strategic location, and 7 retired SEALs. A bonus objective. Rojas wants revenge, but our primary investor wants destabilization. Creating a narco state within US borders serves both purposes. Miguel processed this new information. Not just cartel vengeance, something larger, with bigger players involved. Who's the investor? Catherine smiled. The same expression she'd worn when teasing him over dinner, now twisted into something unrecognizable. You really think I'm going to monologue like a villain, Miguel? I've lived with you for 2 years. I know how you operate. Then you know I won't let this happen. It's already happening. Catherine gestured toward the window, where the helicopter was now lifting off from the plaza. That wasn't reinforcements arriving. That was Antonio Rojas leaving. The real operation begins now. As if on cue, the building shook with a massive explosion from the direction of the harbor. Through his earpiece, Miguel heard Anders Werner's panicked report. They've breached the seawall, flooding the harbor entrance. Our defensive positions are compromised. Catherine's smile widened. Phase 2, isolation. No naval response possible now. Another explosion rocked the town, this one from the direction of the clinic. Multiple casualties, came Dante's strained voice. They hit us with an RPG. Doc Martinez is down. Caleb's condition critical. Miguel kept his weapon steady, even as the situation deteriorated around him. What's the endgame, Catherine? You know this can't last. The military will respond in force. You can't hold American territory. We don't need to hold it, Catherine replied, her tactical assessment cold and precise. We just need to demonstrate that we can take it. Create enough chaos that the response is overwhelming. Military deployment, National Guard activation, border militarization. Understanding dawned. You want to provoke a disproportionate response. Precisely. While all eyes focus on Puerto Azul, Rojas establishes 5 new distribution routes. While the military secures one small town, we compromise 3 border checkpoints with operatives we've cultivated for years. Catherine checked her watch. It's already happening. The real targets were never here. Miguel's mind raced. This wasn't just about Puerto Azul or personal vengeance. It was a sophisticated feint designed to direct American security resources, while the cartel expanded elsewhere. Why tell me this? He asked, calculating distances, angles, options. Catherine studied him with clinical detachment. Because it doesn't matter if you know. You can't stop it. You're contained. Your team is fractured. And in approximately 12 minutes, the demolition charges we've placed throughout Puerto Azul will eliminate any evidence of who was really here. You're going to destroy the whole town, even after everything. The scale of the plan shocked him. Collateral damage, she repeated, as if explaining a simple concept. The narrative is already prepared. Cartel violence spilled over. Local militia engaged, resulting in catastrophic civilian casualties. Congress will authorize expanded border security, military deployment, billions in funding, all focused on the wrong targets. Miguel maintained his aim despite the turmoil in his chest. And us? My team? Dead in the explosion, or hunted as vigilantes who escalated the situation. Your choice. The cold calculation in her eyes he'd looked into countless mornings, sent ice through his veins. Had every moment been performance, every shared confidence catalogued for exploitation? Was any of it real? The question escaped before he could contain it. Something flickered across Catherine's face, so brief he might have imagined it. Does it matter? No, Miguel acknowledged, steadying his grip. I suppose it doesn't. Catherine raised her weapon, slightly, not quite aiming, but ready. You have one chance, Miguel. Surrender your team, and you alone might be spared. Antonio respects certain aspects of your abilities. He could use someone with your training. The offer hung in the air between them, as implausible as it was insulting. You know my answer. Yes, she sighed. I do. The tension peaked. 2 professionals assessing, calculating, waiting for the other to make the first move. Then Catherine's radio crackled with an incoming transmission, momentarily drawing her attention. It was the only opening Miguel needed. With explosive speed, he fired, not at Catherine, but at the building's sprinkler system overhead. Water cascaded down, momentarily disrupting her vision. In that split second, Miguel charged forward, knocking her weapon aside with one hand while driving, his shoulder into her midsection. Catherine reacted with unexpected skill, using his momentum to flip him over her hip. They crashed together into Asterage cabinet, tactical training overriding any lingering sentiment as they fought with lethal intent. She was good, better than her cover identity should allow, but Miguel had decades of close-quarters combat experience. After a brutal exchange of strikes, he pinned her against the wall, forearm pressed against her throat. "The detonator," he demanded. "Where is it?" Catherine's laugh was strained but genuine. "You still don't understand. There's no single detonator. The charges are on independent timers. Puerto Azul dies in 10 minutes, no matter what you do." Miguel pressed harder. "You're lying. Check my equipment. No detonator, no failsafe." The decision was made before we ever came ashore. The cold certainty in her eyes confirmed the truth. This had never been a hostage situation or an occupation. It had always been a suicide mission designed to create maximum chaos. Miguel made his decision. Jackson, new priority. Locate and disarm explosives throughout the town. "We have less than 10 minutes. Understood," came the immediate response. Already detecting unusual heat signatures at the marina, town hall, and water treatment plant, Catherine's eyes widened fractionally, surprised that they could detect the charges. "You can't find them all," she said. "We've had years to prepare. We've had years to prepare too." Miguel secured her hands with a zip tie. "Jackson, use the subsurface mapping system. Find anything that doesn't belong," as Miguel dragged Catherine toward the exit, intent on using her knowledge to locate the remaining explosives. The building rocked with another explosion, this one from the direction of the school. "They're starting the detonation sequence early," Catherine said, a hint of respect coloring her voice. "Your team must be proving more problematic than anticipated." "Or someone changed the plan," Miguel countered, studying her reaction. "Someone who didn't tell you everything." The flicker of uncertainty in her eyes confirmed his suspicion. Catherine was an operative, not the architect. And somewhere in the chain of command, the plan had changed without her knowledge. If Rojas is already clear, why sacrifice the remaining? "Cartel forces?" Miguel pressed. "Those are his men out there. Expendable assets," Catherine replied, but doubt had crept into her voice. "Or someone decided you're all expendable, including you." Before she could respond, Miguel's earpiece crackled with urgent communication. "Osprey, this is Jackson. I've accessed their communication network. You need to hear this." Through his earpiece came a recorded message in Spanish, transmitted to all cartel forces minutes earlier. "All units evacuate North Sector immediately. Operation parameters changed. Complete destruction authorized. No survivors. Repeat, no survivors." Miguel watched as the realization dawned on Catherine's face. She hadn't been privy to the final orders. She'd been left behind with the rest of the expendable assets. "They're sacrificing their own people," Miguel said. "Including you." For the first time, Catherine's professional composure cracked. That wasn't the plan. The explosives were targeted for key infrastructure, not total destruction. Plans change. Miguel yanked her toward the door. "Now help me find those charges, or you die with the rest of us." The midday sun cast harsh shadows across Puerto Azul as Miguel and Catherine moved through deserted streets. In the distance, sporadic gunfire indicated continuing resistance, but the town center had fallen eerily quiet. Cartel forces withdrawing ahead of the impending destruction. The primary charges are at the marina, water treatment plant, and town hall, Catherine said, her tactical training overriding self-preservation. Secondary devices at the school, the clinic, and the power substation. Miguel relayed the information to his team as they moved toward the nearest location, the power substation 2 blocks away. "Werner brothers are handling the marina," Jackson reported. "Ray is en route to the school. Dante can't reach the clinic charges. Area too hot with cartel forces. Time estimate, 7 minutes until the first detonations. We're detecting signal jamming starting to activate. They're failsafe to prevent remote disarming." Miguel glanced at Catherine. "Frequency?" She hesitated, then relented, rotating between 4 bands. "I can give you 3 of them," as she rattled off technical specifications. Miguel relayed them to Jackson, who began working to counteract the jamming. Catherine's cooperation was purely self-interest now. Her survival aligned with theirs against superiors who'd betrayed her. They reached the power substation as another explosion rocked the town. Smaller than the previous blasts, likely a skirmish rather than a demolition charge. "There," Catherine nodded toward an electrical panel. "Behind the main transformer." Miguel approached cautiously, finding a professional-grade explosive device with multiple redundancies. No amateur package. This had been prepared by someone with military training. "Can you disarm it?" Catherine asked, watching him assess the device. Not alone, and not in the time we have. Miguel keyed his comm. Jackson, power substation device is beyond field disarming. Recommend containment protocol. Copy. That. There's a drainage culvert 20 meters east. Should provide blast channeling. Miguel worked quickly, carefully removing the device and carrying it toward the culvert. Catherine followed, her bound hands making her movements awkward, but not stopping her entirely. Why are you helping us? Miguel asked as they secured the device in the concrete drainage channel, where its explosion would be partially contained. Self-preservation, she answered automatically. Then, after a pause, and because this isn't what I signed up for, targeted. Elimination of hostile operators is one thing. Destroying an entire civilian population is another. Even terrorists have standards. Don't moralize, Miguel. You've killed under orders too. Her eyes hardened. We're not so different. The difference is, I never pretended to love the people I was targeting. The words hung between them as they moved to the next location, the town hall, where the largest charge was reportedly placed. They encountered the first obstacle 3 blocks from their destination, a cartel checkpoint manned by 2 gunmen, who appeared as confused by the evacuation order as Catherine had been. Through his scope, Miguel could see them arguing, gesturing toward the plaza where most of the hostages had been gathered. They don't understand why they're abandoning the operation, Catherine observed. The ground troops weren't briefed on the full containment protocol, meaning they don't know they've been sacrificed, Miguel concluded grimly. I can create a distraction, Catherine offered. They'll recognize me. Hesitate just long enough. Miguel considered the tactical advantages against the obvious risk. Trusting her even marginally could be fatal, but the clock was ticking toward detonation. Try anything beyond drawing their attention, and I'll consider you a renewed threat, he warned, removing her restraints. Catherine rubbed her wrists. Understood. The distraction worked precisely as planned. Catherine walking openly toward the checkpoint, calling out to the gunmen in Spanish, identifying herself with code phrases that immediately lowered their weapons. In their moment of confusion, Miguel eliminated both with silent, precise shots from his suppressed sidearm. Catherine knelt beside the fallen men, expressions crossing her face too quickly to read. They were following orders, she said quietly, like we all were. Orders to terrorize civilians, to occupy American soil. Miguel checked his watch. 5 minutes remaining. As they approached Town Hall, Miguel's comm crackled with updates from his team. The Werner brothers had located and disarmed the Marina charges. Ray had contained the school device. Dante reported that cartel forces were withdrawing from the clinic area, allowing access to those explosives. Progress, but not enough. The town hall device remained the largest threat, designed to collapse the central plaza into a sinkhole that would swallow evidence and victims alike. They entered through a side door, finding the building deserted. Cartel forces had abandoned their command post, leaving behind equipment and evidence in their haste to evacuate. Sub-basement, Catherine directed. Near the foundation supports. The town hall's basement level was a maze of storage rooms and mechanical equipment. As they descended the final staircase, Miguel's tactical instincts flared. The darkness ahead was too complete, the silence too perfect. It's a trap, he said quietly, pulling Catherine back. They left someone behind. Before she could respond, muzzle flashes erupted from the darkness. Miguel shoved Catherine aside, returning fire while diving for cover behind a concrete pillar. 3 attackers, strategically positioned to control the only entrance to the basement level. We need that device, Catherine said from her position behind a storage cabinet. 3 minutes remaining. Miguel calculated angles, cover, approach, options. Can you shoot? Yes. He slid his backup weapon across the floor to her, a decision that might prove fatal but necessary given the time constraint. 2 on the left, 1 on the right. I'll draw their fire. You flank right. Catherine checked the weapon with practiced efficiency. If I wanted to betray you, I'd have done it at the checkpoint. Forgive me if your word lacks credibility. Miguel readied himself. On my mark. What followed was a brutal, close-quarters engagement. Miguel moved with the fluid precision of decades of combat experience, drawing fire while advancing methodically. Catherine proved her training was far beyond that of a simple intelligence operative. Her movements coordinated perfectly with his, executing the flanking maneuver with lethal efficiency. In under 40 seconds, all 3 defenders were eliminated. Catherine handed Miguel's weapon back, grip first. 1 minute, 40 seconds remaining. They rushed deeper into the basement, finding the demolition charge exactly where Catherine had indicated. A massive device connected to the building's main support columns. Miguel's heart sank as he assessed it. This is military grade. Multiple redundancies, anti-tampering measures. Hekied his comm. Jackson, town hall device is beyond field disarming capabilities. Evacuate all personnel to minimum safe distance immediately. Understood, came the tense reply. But Miguel, we've still got 12 civilians in the clinic who can't be moved. Too severely injured. The impossible choice. Attempt to disarm an unfamiliar device with no time and little chance of success. Or abandon wounded civilians to certain death. Catherine knelt beside the device, studying it with focused intensity. I can disarm it. Why would I trust you? Because I helped design it. Her eyes met his, something unreadable in their depths. I know the failsafes, the bypasses. This specific model was my responsibility. Miguel weighed the claim against the ticking clock. If this is another deception, then we all die together. I've made my choice, Miguel. She held out her hand. Give me your multi-tool and decide if you're going to trust me one last time. The second hand swept toward detonation as Miguel made his decision, placing his multi-tool in her outstretched palm. Catherine worked with unnerving calm, bypassing security measures with expert precision. Cut the blue wire cluster, she instructed, pointing to a bundle near the power source. That's contrary to standard EOD procedure, Miguel noted, hesitating. Because it's designed that way, to trap anyone following standard procedures. Her eyes locked with his. Trust me or don't, but decide now. 50 seconds remaining. Miguel cut the indicated wires. Nothing happened. Now the red capacitor. Not the wire, the component itself. Disconnect it completely. Each step contradicted conventional explosive disposal techniques, yet Catherine moved with absolute certainty. As the countdown reached 15 seconds, she made a final adjustment and the device's timer froze. Secondary trigger, she explained, removing a hidden detonator nestled beneath the main housing. The timer stopping is designed to give a false sense of security. This is the real failsafe. With surgical precision, she disarmed the final component. With 3 seconds remaining on the backup counter, the basement fell silent, except for their breathing. How do I know it's really disarmed? Miguel asked, weapons still ready. Catherine sat back on her heels. You don't, but if I wanted you dead, I'd have let the timer run. Miguel relayed the success to his team, who reported similar progress at their locations. All primary charges contained or disarmed. Puerto Azul would survive, structurally at least, as they climbed back to ground level. Miguel's satellite phone buzzed with an incoming message. A live video call from an unlisted number. He answered to find himself looking at a face he recognized from intelligence briefings. Antonio Rojas, son of the cartel leader Miguel's team had eliminated years ago. Commander Reyes, Rojas greeted him, his English perfect and accent-free. I see you found my gift. The explosives have been disarmed, Miguel replied evenly. Your operation has failed. Rojas smiled, the same cold expression his father had worn. Has it? Tell me, what happens now? American military deployed to the border, increased security funding, heightened tensions with Mexico, and meanwhile, my real shipments are already moving through channels you haven't even identified yet. Miguel maintained his composure, despite the growing realization that Puerto Azul had indeed been a diversion, but not in the way they'd initially thought. We'll find them, perhaps, but not today. Rojas leaned closer to the camera. Today was just to deliver a message. You took my father from me. I wanted you to experience the same loss, to watch helplessly as everything you built was destroyed. You failed, Miguel stated flatly. Did I? Rojas's smile widened. Check your clinic, Commander. The call ended abruptly, leaving Miguel with a chill spreading through his chest. He immediately activated his comm. Dante, status at the clinic. Charges disarmed, came the immediate reply. Civilians secure. But Miguel... Dante's voice faltered. Caleb didn't make it. He bled out 10 minutes ago. The first casualty among his team. A brother lost. Beside him, Catherine watched his reaction with unreadable eyes. I'm sorry, she said after a moment. Caleb wasn't supposed to die. The operation parameters... Don't! Miguel cut her off, grief hardening to rage. Don't pretend. There were rules or honor in this. You helped orchestrate an attack on American civilians. On your neighbors. Yes, she acknowledged, straightening her shoulders. And now I've helped save them. What happens to me now, Miguel? It was the question that had hovered between them since the moment she'd revealed her true identity. Miguel studied her, the woman he'd thought he knew, the operative who'd betrayed him, the tactical asset who'd just saved dozens of lives, possibly including his own. That depends, he said finally, on what you know about Rojas's real operation. The one Puerto Azul was designed to distract us from. Catherine considered this, calculation visible in her eyes. I know enough to hurt him significantly. Locations, Contacts, routing information. Why would you give that up now? Because he left me to die, she answered simply. And because, she hesitated, something almost human crossing her features. Because some lines shouldn't be crossed, even in our world. Miguel studied her, searching for deception, and finding instead a complex mixture of professional pragmatism and genuine regret. Jackson, he said into his comm, contact our federal liaison. We have an asset for debriefing. As Border Patrol and the first military responders finally entered Puerto Azul's outskirts, Miguel looked across the town that had been his sanctuary and was now forever changed. Buildings stood damaged, but not destroyed. Citizens were traumatized, but mostly alive, and walking beside him was the woman who had been both the architect of the attack and instrumental in preventing its worst outcome. A contradiction he wasn't yet ready to reconcile. What he did know with certainty, Puerto Azul had survived, but the war had only just begun. Somewhere, Antonio Rojas was executing the real operation, moving tons of narcotics through channels they hadn't identified, establishing infrastructure they hadn't detected. And he'd taken one of Miguel's brothers as the first casualty. The battle for the quiet fishing village was over. The war for the border had just escalated. Dusk fell over Puerto Azul, casting long shadows across a town transformed. Military vehicles lined the streets where fishing boats once parked. Border Patrol agents established checkpoints where children had played. Medical evacuation helicopters ferried the wounded to hospitals in Corpus Christi, their rotors beating, a steady rhythm against the darkening sky. Miguel stood on the roof of the hardware store, surveying the aftermath through tactical binoculars. The official response had finally arrived. Too late for Caleb, too late for the dozen civilians who hadn't survived the occupation, but in time to secure what remained. Perimeter established 2 miles out, Jackson reported, joining him at the rooftop edge. Military has deployed 3 companies along the coastal approach. Border Patrol running interdiction operations to the south and west. And Rojas? Miguel asked, not lowering the binoculars. No sign. Satellite tracking lost his helicopter 30 miles into Mexican airspace. Our contacts report unusual activity at 3 border crossings, El Paso, Nogales, and Laredo. Something big is moving, but intelligence is fragmented. Miguel lowered the binoculars, the weight of command settling heavier than it had in years. Caleb, being transported to Naval Air Station Corpus Christi, full military honors. A moment of silence. It passed between them. Acknowledgement of the brother they'd lost, the line that had been crossed. When Miguel spoke again, his voice carried the cold precision of an operator planning a mission. What's Catherine's status? Federal custody. FBI has her at their field office in Corpus, debriefing underway. Jackson hesitated. They're treating her as an intelligence asset, not a hostile. Because of the information she's offering on Rojas's operation. Jackson nodded. That, and her role in disarming the explosives. She's positioning herself as a double agent whose cover was intact until she helped save civilian lives. Miguel's jaw tightened. Convenient narrative, but potentially useful. Jackson countered. If she genuinely knows Rojas's infrastructure, targets, personnel, that's a significant if, Miguel cut in. Everything she's told us could be another layer of deception, another trap. Before Jackson could respond, the roof access door opened to reveal Sheriff Rhodes, her arm in a sling but her bearing unchanged by the day's events. Thought I'd find you up here, she said, approaching with a slight limp. Military wants to debrief you. Again, let them wait, Miguel replied, turning back to the skyline. Rhodes joined them at the edge, surveying her damaged town. 16 dead, 43 wounded. But it could have been everyone. Small comfort to the 16 families, Miguel said quietly. No, Rhodes acknowledged. But I've been in law enforcement 23 years. Sometimes you measure victory by who you manage to save when the alternative was losing them all. The pragmatic assessment cut through Miguel's growing sense of failure. Rhodes wasn't offering absolution, just the cold mathematics of crisis response. The military is establishing a forward operating base at the marina, she continued. They're calling Puerto Azul a national security priority zone now. Congressional delegation arriving tomorrow for assessment. Political theater, Jackson muttered. Maybe, Rhodes conceded. But it comes with resources, medical support, infrastructure repair, enhanced protection, and surveillance, Miguel added. The peaceful fishing village is gone for good. Now it's a security checkpoint. Rhodes studied him, professional assessment in her gaze. You knew this day might come. That's why you chose Puerto Azul in the first place, isn't it? Strategic location, defensible approaches, minimal civilian infrastructure to protect. The accusation landed with precision because it contained truth. They had chosen Puerto Azul carefully, a town that could be defended if necessary, with evacuation, routes and contingency plans built into their daily routines. We thought our presence would deter threats, not attract them, Miguel said. And when that calculation proved wrong, you stood and fought anyway. Rhodes straightened, wincing at the pain in her shoulder. The town council is meeting in 1 hour. Emergency session to determine next steps. They've requested your team's presence. Miguel exchanged glances with Jackson. In what capacity? As the men who saved what remains of Puerto Azul, Rhodes replied. Simply, and as the reason it was targeted in the first place. They deserve answers, Miguel. The full truth this time. After Rhodes departed, Miguel and Jackson remained on the rooftop, watching military searchlights begin their steady sweep of the Gulf waters. Think they'll run us out of town with pitchforks? Jackson asked, dark humor masking genuine concern. They'd have the right, Miguel acknowledged. We brought this to their doorstep. We also stopped it from being worse. Tell that to Caleb's body. To the 16 civilians who died today. Jackson's expression sobered. What's our next move? The team is waiting for direction. Miguel turned from the view, decision made. We face the town council, tell them everything. Then we hunt Antonio Rojas. The military won't sanction that operation, Jackson warned. We'd be civilians pursuing a foreign national across international borders. I'm not asking for permission. Miguel checked his watch. Gather the team. Full briefing at Doc Martinez's clinic in 20 minutes. We owe him that much at least. As Jackson departed, Miguel remained a moment longer, eyes fixed on the distant horizon where Mexico lay beyond the Adige darkness. Somewhere out there, Antonio Rojas was executing the next phase of his operation, believing he had delivered his message and escaped unscathed. He was wrong. The hunter was coming. The town council meeting took place in the church basement, the only large gathering space left undamaged by the day's events. Mayor Elena Morales presided, her composure remarkable given that her daughter had been among the hostages. Around the improvised conference table sat the remaining council members, Sheriff Rhodes, military representatives, and Border Patrol Command. Miguel and his team entered last, their presence drawing immediate tension. The Werner brothers, stoic as always. Ray, eyes haunted by the day's combat. Dante, right arm bandaged from wrist to elbow. Only Caleb's absence spoke louder than their grim expressions. Let's begin, Mayor Morales said, bringing the murmuring room to silence. Commander Reyes, I believe you have information relevant to today's events. Miguel stepped forward, feeling the weight of dozens of eyes. Neighbors who had trusted him, welcomed him, believed his carefully constructed cover as a simple fisherman seeking quiet retirement. My name is Commander Miguel Reyes, former Navy SEAL, Team 6. The men with me are my former team members. He gestured to each in turn. For the past 8 years, we have been living in Puerto Azul under civilian cover, monitoring cartel activity, and maintaining defensive preparations for the town. A council member, Eduardo Vega, the hardware store owner, leaned forward. You knew this could happen, that they would come for us. We believed our presence would deter such an action, Miguel replied honestly. The cartel knows we eliminated one of their leadership cells during our active service. We thought they would avoid confrontation. You used us as human shields. Another council member accused, voice rising. No, Miguel countered firmly. We established early warning systems, evacuation protocols, and defensive measures that saved lives today. We chose Puerto Azul because it could be protected, because its strategic location made it defensible. Mayor Morales raised a hand, silencing further outbursts. The fact remains that Puerto Azul was targeted specifically because of your presence. 16 of our citizens are dead. Our town is under military occupation. Our future is uncertain. Her gaze hardened. What do you propose to do about it? Miguel met her eyes without flinching. We eliminate the threat permanently. We hunt Antonio Rojas and dismantle his operation before he can establish it elsewhere. The military representative, a colonel whose uniform identified him as Joint Task Force Command, shook his head. That's not happening, Commander. This is now an official military and federal law enforcement operation. Your team will submit to full debriefing and stand down. With respect, Colonel, Miguel responded. We have intelligence, contacts, and operational experience your forces don't possess. We can move in ways your official channels cannot. You're civilians now, the colonel reminded him. Any cross-border operation would constitute a serious breach of international law and military protocol. Mayor Morales studied Miguel thoughtfully. What exactly are you proposing, Commander? A joint operation, Miguel said. My team provides intelligence and operational support to the official response. will help identify Rojas's actual targets. The Operations Puerto Azul was meant to distract from. Using what resources? The colonel challenged. We have contacts within intelligence communities. Assets your official channels can't acknowledge. Miguel turned to the mayor. And we have motivation. Your personnel can't match. These people were our neighbors, our friends. A heavy silence fell over the room as the implications settled. Finally, Sheriff Rhodes spoke up. I'll coordinate with Commander Reyes's team. My department will provide local authority for their activities within U.S. jurisdiction. The colonel frowned. Sheriff, my town, my jurisdiction. Rhodes cut him off. Unless you're declaring martial law, Colonel, in which case you'd better have authorization from the governor. The standoff continued until Mayor Morales cleared her throat. The council will vote, all in favor of authorizing Commander Reyes's team to operate in coordination with Sheriff Rhodes, with the understanding that they will share all intelligence with federal authorities. One by one, hands raised, some hesitantly, others with firm resolve. Eduardo Vega was the last, his expression conflicted as he raised his hand. It's decided then, Mayor Morales announced. Commander, you have 72 hours to demonstrate meaningful progress before we revisit this authorization. As the meeting adjourned, Miguel found himself face to face with Eduardo Vega, the man whose hardware store had supplied materials for many of their contingency preparations over the years. My nephew was among the dead, Vega said quietly. 17 years old, working his summer job at the marina when they came. Miguel met his gaze without excuses. I'm sorry. Find them, Vega replied, grief hardening to resolve. Make them pay. Then don't come back. The simplicity of the directive, both mission and exile in one, struck Miguel more deeply than any official censure could have. As Vega walked away, Miguel turned to find Mayor Morales watching him. The council authorized your operation, she said, gathering her notes. I did not oppose it because I believe you owe this town a debt. But understand me clearly, Commander. When this is over, Puerto Azul will need to heal, to rebuild trust. Your presence would complicate that process. I understand, Miguel acknowledged. The cost of the day's events continuing to mount. Do you? For 8 years you lived among us, broke bread with us, became part of this community. Her composure cracked slightly. My daughter trusted you, called you Uncle Miguel when you taught her to fish. The personal connection, one of many he'd formed in his years here, drove the knife deeper. Elena, Mayor Morales, she corrected, firmly. Find Rojas, stop whatever he's planning, then honor Eduardo's request. As she walked away, Dante joined Miguel, reading his expression with the familiarity of decades of brotherhood. So that's it? We save the town, then get exiled? We brought war to their doorstep, Miguel reminded him. They've earned the right to decide who lives among them. Dante nodded, the hard reality settling between them. Guess we always knew this day might come. Focus on the mission first, Miguel said, compartmentalizing as he'd been trained to do. We have 72 hours to find Rojas's real operation and shut it down, starting with our one source of inside information, Catherine, Dante surmised. You trust anything she says? Miguel's expression hardened. No, but I know how to make her talk. The Corpus Christi FBI field office had been transformed into an impromptu command center, with agents and analysts working around the clock to process intelligence from the Puerto Azul incident. Miguel navigated the controlled chaos with the credentials Sheriff Rhodes had arranged, consultant status that granted limited access, but kept him firmly under federal supervision. Agent Sarah Harlow, the case supervisor, met him in the secure conference room where Catherine was being debriefed. Commander Reyes, I've been instructed to give you 15 minutes with the asset. Her name is Catherine Mills, Miguel corrected. And she's not an asset. She's a hostile operative who participated in an attack on American soil. Harlow's expression remained neutral. She provided critical intelligence that prevented further casualties. She disarmed explosives that would have killed dozens. More, the appropriate designation is under review. Politics. Already the narrative was being shaped, Catherine repositioning herself as an intelligence source rather than an enemy combatant. 15 minutes, Miguel acknowledged. Alone, that's not protocol. It's non-negotiable. Harlow considered this, then nodded reluctantly. The room is monitored. Any sign of coercion or inappropriate interrogation techniques, and we terminate the interview immediately. Understood. Catherine sat at the metal table, dressed in standard-issue clothing provided to federal detainees. Without her tactical gear or her teacher's casual attire, she seemed suspended between identities. Neither the woman he'd known, nor the operative who'd betrayed him, but something in between. She looked up as he entered, her expression shifting from practiced calm to something more complex. Miguel. Catherine. He remained standing, maintaining the psychological advantage of height. Or is that even your real name? It's real enough, she replied. One of many, but the one I've used longest. Miguel studied her, searching for signs of the woman he'd believed he knew, finding instead a carefully constructed facade with glimpses of calculation behind it. Why am I here? She asked when he remained silent. Rojas's real operation. The one Puerto Azul was meant to distract from. I want locations, personnel, timetables. Catherine leaned back slightly. I've already provided that information to federal authorities. You've provided what you want them to know, Miguel countered. Not everything you know. A flicker of respect crossed her features. You always were perceptive. It's what drew me to you initially. Professionally speaking, the casual reference to their relationship struck like a physical blow, but Miguel maintained his composure. Puerto Azul was a feint. What's the real target? Catherine considered him for a long moment, calculation visible in her eyes. What's my incentive to provide additional intelligence? I'm already negotiating terms with the Justice Department. Because I know what you want more than immunity, Miguel said, taking the seat across from her. You want revenge on Antonio Rojas for leaving you to die. The observation hit its mark. Catherine's carefully neutral expression hardened momentarily. Rojas altered the operational parameters without informing you, Miguel continued. Escalated from targeted structure demolition to complete destruction. Abandoned you and the ground forces to eliminate witnesses and evidence. A tactical adjustment, Catherine replied. But the slight tension in her shoulders betrayed her. No, a betrayal. Miguel leaned forward. He sacrificed you because you became a liability. Because somewhere in the past 2 years, something changed. Catherine remained silent, watching him with newfound wariness. Your mission was intelligence gathering, Miguel continued, assembling the puzzle pieces. Establish cover, monitor our activities, prepare for eventual operation. Standard deep cover protocol. But something happened, didn't it? Something that made Rojas doubt your loyalty. You're speculating, she said, but the denial lacked conviction. No, I'm observing. You helped disarm those explosives with genuine urgency. Your surprise when you learned about the communication to evacuate cartel forces was real. Rojas didn't just adjust the operation. He deliberately kept you in the dark because he intended for you to die alongside your targets. Catherine's composure cracked slightly. What do you want, Miguel? The full operational brief, not the sanitized version you're feeding the FBI to secure your deal. Everything you know about Rojas's infrastructure, personnel, and current movements. And in exchange, you get to be part of the team that takes him down. Miguel held her gaze. You get your revenge. A calculating smile spread across Catherine's face. You're offering to work with me. The woman who betrayed you, who lived a lie for 2 years. I'm offering to use your intelligence to eliminate a mutual enemy, Miguel clarified. Nothing more. Catherine studied him. Professional assessment replacing personal connection. The FBI won't sanction an operation based on my intelligence without verification. They'll move cautiously, through official channels. By the time they act, Rojas's operation will be complete. I'm not working exclusively through official channels. Understanding dawned in her eyes. Your team. Operating with local authorization, but without federal approval. She nodded slowly. Efficient. Deniable. Precisely what the situation requires. The intelligence, Catherine. She leaned forward, dropping pretense. Rojas isn't just moving product. He's establishing infrastructure. Permanent presence on U.S. soil disguised as legitimate business operations. Puerto Azul was meant to be the flagship, but there are 3 secondary locations already operational. Where? Eagle Pass, Presidio, and Brownsville. Former industrial facilities repurposed as distribution centers. The documentation is flawless. Shell companies with clean backgrounds, all permits and inspections cleared through compromised officials. Shipments, already moving. The largest comes through tonight. Eagle Pass location. Approximately 2 tons of product concealed in manufacturing equipment shipments. Value estimated at $75 million wholesale. Miguel processed this information, cross-referencing with what Jackson had already uncovered. Federal authorities would need warrants, probable cause. By the time they cut through the red tape, the shipment will be broken down, distributed, and untraceable. Catherine finished. Which is why you need to move now, without federal authorization. And Rojas himself, not on site for shipment operations. He's coordinating remotely from a compound 30 miles south of the border, heavily defended, regularly relocated. Miguel studied her, searching for deception, and finding instead the cold efficiency of a professional intelligence operative. Why should I believe any of this? Catherine's expression hardened. Because Rojas betrayed me after 5 years of loyal service. because he sacrificed dozens of our personnel without warning, and because, she hesitated, something almost human, crossing her features. Because some of what happened in Puerto Azul wasn't supposed to happen. 16 civilians died, Miguel reminded her coldly. And it would have been hundreds if I hadn't helped disarm those devices, she countered. Whatever you think of me, my intelligence is accurate. Use it or don't, but understand that every hour you delay, Rojas's operation becomes more entrenched. The Dway. Interview timer beeped, signaling the end of his allotted 15 minutes. Miguel stood, decision made. One last question. Was any of it real? Any moment in 2 years? Catherine met his eyes, and for a brief moment, the calculated facade fell away. Some moments, more than there should have been. That's why Rojas decided I couldn't be extracted. Why I became expendable. Before Miguel could process this revelation, Agent Harlow entered to terminate the interview. As he was escorted from the room, Catherine called after him. Miguel, the fishing trip. Last summer, the storm that came out of nowhere. He paused, remembering. They'd been stranded on the water as a sudden squall struck, forced to shelter in a small cove overnight. Catherine had seemed different afterward, more present, less guarded. That night was real, she said simply. Remember that when you decide whether to use my intelligence. The team gathered at their fallback position, a safe house Jackson had established years earlier on the outskirts of Corpus Christi. As Miguel relayed Catherine's intelligence, the others processed it with professional detachment, setting aside the personal betrayal to focus on operational considerations. Eagle Pass location is approximately 4 hours from our position, Jackson confirmed, displaying satellite imagery on his tablet. Former manufacturing facility, now operating as Southwest Logistics Solutions. Shipping records show regular deliveries from Mexico, all properly documented. Perfect cover for moving product, Dante observed. Security, minimal visible presence, but thermal imaging shows more personnel than a legitimate operation would require. Approximately 20 armed individuals on rotating patrols. Ray studied the building layout. Loading bays on the east side. Administrative offices north. Primary. Access from the highway to the west. Single approach makes infiltration challenging, Eric Werner noted. They'll see us coming. Not if we're expected, Miguel said. Catherine provided trucking company details. They're using legitimate shipping partners who are unaware of the actual cargo. We intercept one of the scheduled deliveries, Anders Werner surmised. Use it as our Trojan horse. Exactly. We have, Miguel checked his watch. 4 hours until the primary shipment arrives. Border crossing at 2200 hours. Arrival at the facility estimated at 2330. Dante leaned forward. Assuming Catherine's intelligence is accurate, I believe it is, Miguel said, but we'll verify independently. Jackson, access border crossing camera feeds. Confirm the scheduled deliveries match what she provided. Already in progress, Jackson replied, typing rapidly. And I've got another source inside Border Patrol providing real-time updates. Ray cleared his throat. What about Caleb? The question hung heavy in the air. Their fallen brother, whose body was being prepared for transport to Arlington National Cemetery. We honor him by completing the mission, Miguel said quietly, by ensuring Rojas can't establish the foothold that would make Caleb's sacrifice meaningless. The team nodded in solemn agreement. Then, Eric Werner asked the question they'd all been considering. And after, Mayor Morales made it clear we're not welcome back in Puerto Azul. Miguel met each of their eyes in turn. Men who had followed him through war zones and kept faith during peacetime, who had built lives in the town that had now exiled them. We complete this mission. Then each of you decides your own path forward. The team has fulfilled its purpose. You're disbanding us? Ray asked, disbelief evident in his voice. I'm acknowledging reality, Miguel corrected. Puerto Azul was our home base, our sanctuary. Without it, we operate at increased risk. Each of you has given enough already. A heavy silence settled over. The group, broken finally by Dante. Let's focus on the mission first. Plenty of time to figure out the rest once Rojas is dealt with. Miguel nodded, grateful for the reprieve from a decision that felt like severing a limb. Gear up. We move in 30 minutes. Full tactical loadout, communications secure, weapons hot. As the team prepared, Miguel stepped outside, needing a moment of solitude before leading what might be their final mission together. The night air carried the distant scent of the Gulf, the same waters that had provided their cover for 8 years, now irreversibly associated with invasion and loss. His satellite phone vibrated with an incoming message. Sheriff Rhodes, providing an update from Puerto Azul. The military had established full perimeter control. Reconstruction planning was underway. The first funerals would be held tomorrow. And beneath the procedural updates, a personal note. Catherine Mill's house has been searched. Found this in a hidden compartment beneath the floorboards. Thought you should see it before the feds claim it as evidence. Attached was a photograph of a handwritten letter dated 6 months earlier. Miguel read it with growing disbelief. Handler. Asset Kingfisher requesting extraction. Cover potentially compromised due to emotional entanglement with primary target. Recommend immediate reassignment to prevent operational security breach. The extraction request had been denied with a single word stamped across it. Continue. Catherine had tried to remove herself from the operation. Had recognized that something had changed, that her feelings for him had become a security risk, and her superiors had forced her to remain in place, to continue the deception despite her concerns. The revelation didn't excuse her actions, but cast them in a new light, one that complicated the clean lines of betrayal Miguel had drawn in his mind. His phone vibrated again, this time with a message directly from Catherine, somehow bypassing normal security protocols. Eagle Pass is the primary shipment, but not Rojas's location. He'll be personally overseeing the Brownsville operation tomorrow night. That's your chance to end this permanently. This intelligence is not part of my official statement. Use it accordingly. Miguel stared at the message, weighing its credibility against the risk of another trap. Catherine had proven both her capacity for deception and her tactical value. Trusting her again could be catastrophic, or it could provide the opportunity they needed to eliminate the threat permanently. Decision. Time. Trust the intelligence and split their resources between Eagle Pass and Brownsville, potentially walking into another ambush, or focus solely on the confirmed shipment and miss the chance to capture Rojas himself. In the end, the hunter and Miguel made the choice. To end this, they needed to cut off the head of the operation, not just intercept one shipment. He re-entered the safe house, where his team waited for direction. Change of plans, he announced. We're splitting into 2 operational teams. Eagle Pass tonight, Brownsville tomorrow. Primary objective remains disrupting the shipment network, but we've received intelligence that Rojas himself will be on site, at the Brownsville location. Source? Jackson asked immediately. Miguel met his gaze directly. Catherine. The team exchanged glances, tension evident. You're trusting her intelligence? Ray asked incredulously. After everything? I'm verifying it, Miguel corrected, and making tactical adjustments based on risk assessment. We hit Eagle Pass tonight as planned. Disrupt the shipment, gather evidence, intelligence. Minimal team. Dante, Jackson, Ray. The Werner brothers and I will prepare for Brownsville reconnaissance, ready to execute tomorrow night if Catherine's intelligence proves accurate. Dante studied him, decades of friendship allowing him to read what Miguel wasn't saying aloud. You believe her. I believe she wants revenge on Rojas, Miguel clarified. Our interests temporarily align. The team accepted this pragmatic assessment, returning to mission preparation with professional focus. But as they loaded gear into nondescript vehicles, Dante pulled Miguel aside. I saw the message from Rhodes, he said quietly. About Catherine's extraction request. Miguel's expression remained neutral. Operational information. Nothing more. Maybe, Dante acknowledged. Or maybe there's more complexity to this situation than just betrayal. Focus on the mission, Miguel replied, closing the subject. We can unravel Catherine's motivations after we stop Rojas. As they prepared to depart, Miguel knew the coming operation would define not just Rojas's fate, but the future of his team, his own path forward, and possibly the security of the entire border region. The hunters were moving into position. The prey remained unaware. The final confrontation approached. The Eagle Pass operation succeeded with surgical precision. Dante's team intercepted Rojas's shipment, neutralized security, and secured evidence for federal authorities, leaving the compromised site to be discovered through anonymous tips. By dawn, they had withdrawn, their presence untraceable. Miguel monitored from their Brownsville staging area while the Werner brothers confirmed unusual activity at Catherine's intel location. Eagle Pass team clear, Dante reported. Package secured exactly as Catherine described. Minimal resistance, site ready for federal discovery. Surveillance confirms increased security at Brownsville, Anders Werner added. 3 new security teams arrived. Communications equipment on the roof, consistent with VIP preparations. Or an ambush, Eric countered. The fundamental risk remained. Trusting Catherine's intelligence after her betrayal, Miguel's satellite phone vibrated. Agent Harlow from the FBI field office. Asset providing significant intelligence. Eagle Pass location raided based on anonymous tip. Asset requesting direct communication regarding Brownsville operation. Minutes. Later, Catherine's voice came through the encrypted connection. Rojas is accelerating the timeline, arriving at 1800 today, not tomorrow. The entire operation will be completed by midnight. Verification, Miguel demanded. Check shipping manifests, filed with customs in the past hour. Scheduled change for 3 container transports crossing at Brownsville, Jackson confirmed. Manifests updated exactly as she described. Why tell us this? Miguel asked. Because Rojas left me to die, Catherine replied. And because somewhere in those 2 years, lines blurred. You know, that's why I requested extraction 6 months ago. The extraction request Sheriff Rhodes had discovered. Catherine knew Miguel had seen it. You're still playing an angle. What is it? When you move against Rojas, I want to be there, she said. I want him to see me, to know exactly who helped bring him down. Not happening. Then you'll be operating with incomplete intelligence, she countered. The facility has security features you don't know about. Underground access points, counter-surveillance measures. I designed half of them. Miguel made his decision. You can observe with FBI handlers, but you do not participate. Non-negotiable. Dusk settled over Brownsville as the team took positions around the warehouse. Loading bays remained active, workers moving crates with practiced efficiency that appeared ordinary to casual observation. I count 17 tangos, Eric Werner reported. Standard patrol patterns consistent with Catherine's intel. From their observation post, Miguel watched through high-powered optics. Catherine sat beside him with Agent Harlow, identifying key personnel. That's Marcos Delgado, she said, indicating a tall man directing security. Former Mexican intelligence, extremely dangerous. 3 black SUVs approached Rojas's advance team. They conducted sweeps with professional efficiency. Minutes later, a nondescript sedan with diplomatic plates arrived. That's not Rojas's vehicle, Catherine said. That's not protocol. A middle-aged man in an expensive suit emerged, carrying a diplomatic pouch. He entered without security checks. Running. Facial recognition, Agent Harlow said, accessing databases. Manuel Ortega, Deputy Commercial Attaché at the Mexican Consulate in Houston. 10 minutes later, Jackson reported. Multiple vehicles approaching from northeast. Formation consistent, with high-value transport. That's him, Catherine confirmed as the armored Mercedes entered the secure parking. Anders reported. Visual confirmation on target. Rojas has entered with 8-man security detail. Diplomatic contact accompanying. Miguel ordered surveillance. Deployment. Micro-drones equipped with audio and visual recording capabilities. Minutes later, the feeds activated, capturing Rojas meeting with the diplomat. Shipments must continue regardless, Rojas was saying. Eagle Pass was unfortunate but not critical. My principals disagree, the diplomat replied. The investment was predicated on minimal federal attention. Now we have FBI, DEA, and military assets converging. Temporary setback. Puerto Azul served its purpose. Security resources are focused there while we establish distribution through alternate channels. And the SEALs who survived your assault, being addressed. We have assets tracking their movements. My principles require certainty. The diplomat pressed. The political aspects are delicate. Your principals have received everything promised. Rojas cut in. Protection fees paid. Distribution networks established. Political influence secured. If they wish to withdraw, I have other partners. The surveillance continued capturing evidence of shipment schedules, protection arrangements, and financial transfers. Enough to dismantle not just Rojas's operation, but expose diplomatic corruption. We've got enough, Harlow said. This justifies immediate federal action. How long for tactical teams? Miguel asked. Minimum 40 minutes for first responders. Full tactical team, 90 minutes. Too long. The meeting was concluding. We move now, Miguel decided. Surveillance phase complete. Shifting to capture operation. That exceeds your authorization. Harlow objected. Noted. We'll proceed without official authorization. Catherine offered critical intelligence. The security system can be overridden from any terminal. Code sequence 7729 Alpha Echo 4. That will freeze cameras and locks for 3 minutes. Miguel and Dante breached the facility, using Catherine's codes to bypass security. They reached the conference room, where Rojas sat with the diplomat, security personnel positioned around them. Federal agents, Miguel announced, weapons raised. Hands where we can see them. Rojas showed no surprise. You're not federal agents. You're Miguel Reyes. Team 6. The man who killed my father. As Dante secured the room, Miguel's comms sparked. With urgent reports, multiple tactical teams converging on the building, Overwatch positions compromised. You knew we were coming, Miguel realized. I counted on it, Rojas confirmed. Catherine played her role perfectly, feeding you just enough credible intelligence to bring you here, at this exact time. The betrayal struck hard. Catherine had played them, after all. Your communications specialist is quite talented, Rojas continued. But my team has been monitoring your frequencies since you arrived. Your overwatch positions are already compromised. Miguel made his decision. Stand up. You're coming with us. And how do you imagine that ending, Commander? Every law enforcement agency will be hunting you for kidnapping, a Mexican national with diplomatic connections. As they moved Rojas toward extraction, the facility's alarms triggered. Security override ended. They fought their way toward the roof, using Rojas as a shield against his own security forces. On the roof, options diminished rapidly. Their communications compromised, team members potentially captured, extraction routes blocked. Miguel's satellite phone displayed an unexpected message. East building, second floor, window open, K. Catherine. Another trap or genuine assistance? Possible extraction route, Miguel indicated to Dante, pointing toward the adjacent building, where a window stood open 15 feet across a narrow alley. Dante made the jump successfully, as Miguel prepared to follow with the intelligence materials. Security teams burst onto the roof. Rojas slipped away in the chaos. Miguel abandoned the capture attempt, prioritizing the intelligence. His leap across the gap was compromised by gunfire. He barely made it, Dante pulling him to safety as bullets impacted around them. Inside waited Catherine. You're late, she said simply. Miguel kept his weapon trained on her. Explain, Rojas played. Us both, she replied. I was never fully trusted after requesting removal from the mission. Why help us now? Because some choices define us. I made mine when I helped disarm those explosives in Puerto Azul. They escaped through Catherine's extraction route, a service stairwell leading to an unmarked SUV. Federal agents intercepted them 2 blocks away, securing the intelligence materials that would dismantle Rojas's operation. 3 days later, Miguel stood at Arlington National Cemetery as Caleb was laid to rest with military honors. The intelligence secured from Rojas's facility had proven invaluable. Federal authorities raiding 17 locations across 3 states, dismantling Rojas's infrastructure. The diplomatic attaché had been quietly recalled to Mexico. Rojas himself had disappeared. Catherine Mills has been processed into witness protection, Agent Harlow told Miguel. Her testimony has already secured indictments against 3 high-level officials. She handed Miguel a sealed envelope. Inside was a handwritten note. The night of the storm was real. Not everything can be explained away as operational necessity. Some truths exist without witnesses. 6 months later, Miguel stood on Puerto Azul's rebuilt fishing pier. The town had transformed. Buildings repaired, infrastructure modernized, security enhanced. He came rarely and briefly, honoring the town council's request for distance while fulfilling his commitment to assist rebuilding. Didn't expect to see you here, Sheriff Rhodes said, approaching. Final inspection, Miguel explained. Contractors completed the reinforcement yesterday. As they talked, Miguel's phone vibrated, a predetermined signal from Dante, who maintained surveillance near the Mexican border. An opportunity had emerged. Rojas had been spotted at a compound outside Mexico City, traveling with minimal security. Then another message, from an unlisted number. He'll be at the Hacienda Azul tomorrow night. Minimal security. Meeting with financial backers. 1 chance. Only. Trust this or don't. Your choice. K. Catherine. Still feeding intelligence that could be salvation or trap. Ready? Dante asked later that night. Equipment secured. Weapons checked. Approach planned. Miguel nodded. Decision made. Commitment absolute. Ready. As they moved into darkness, Miguel carried everything that had led to this moment. Blood. Spilled on Puerto Azul's shores. Caleb's grave at Arlington. Catherine's complicated truth. The responsibility that had brought his team into a cartel lord's crosshairs. The hunter had become the weapon itself. Forged in combat, tempered by loss, aimed with singular purpose. Across the border, Rojas waited, unaware that justice approached from shadows. The quiet fisherman had returned to deeper, darker waters. And in those depths, he remained what he had always been, a predator who'd earned his